What's good, people? We're back with a Sorare NBA video. I know what you're thinking. It's a little bit too early. We're around 6 to 8 weeks now from the start of the NBA season, depending on what time I put this video out. I'm going to run through some of the scouting options that I'm seeing for sort of an MVP, your low contender options, and also those filler guys for those champion lineups. Before we jump into the video, though, if I could please ask you to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and put in the comments down below things that you want to see on Sorare NBA for the second season that we're getting. Anyway, let's get into it. Right then, it's been a hot minute since we dropped an NBA video here on Sorare. I've got some football stuff and gallery updates that I'll probably do in another video. But on this one, I just want to focus on the NBA. I'll run you through my gallery, actually, because it has been, like I said, a hot minute since we've done that. So we'll jump into here. And the one thing that I'm going to say straight off the bat before we do anything in terms of scouting, you'll notice I've completed the 76ers. I had a discussion about this on my Twitter. You can follow it at George_St. there on Twitter. Drop me a follow. I love talking about Sorare on Twitter. So the more of you that are watching this video, come and have a chat over there. But the point of this was, we all know that on the football side of things, on Sorare here, there are the collection bonuses. Now, if you only play the NBA and you watch my videos and you were watching them last year and you're unsure on what the collections are, I'll quickly run you through them. So the premise of it is, however many cards you collect, you get a score. However big your score is, you'll get a bonus on your cards. So, I mean, I played, I'm a Man United season ticket holder. I've played Man United stacks all last year, done pretty well, that won a few good cards. But as you can see, you'll get a different lightning bolt that will come from each collection. So if I have a Casemiro that's first owner, I'll get 10. He's in my collection for 90 days, not been listed. Another 10, and he was a new card. I bought him on auction, so that's 20. You can get up to sort of 70 per card. But what this means is that they'll get a percentage boost going into next season. And I feel that, and again, this isn't anything that's been confirmed by Sorare by any means, but I feel like it would be coming. They've already announced that ETH is going to be coming to Sorare next year. So I think that the next step will be implementing collections. I feel like it would be a bit weird to have a collections tab and then not have any boosts be relevant to it, is how I see things. So I went out and I had a few Sixers players last year from when I played stacks, especially in the playoffs. So I went out and just rounded off the completion for this. I had the Embiid, I had a Harris, I had quite a lot of them. I had to go and pick up a James Harden and a few of the other filler guys. And they're like a couple of quid here and there. And I feel that if there is a percentage boost given, it will help an Embiid and it will help the Hardens and the Miltons and the Meltons of the world. But that's something that off the top of this video in terms of scouting, I feel that if you're anywhere near any completions or you have any main MVP guys that you've got, potentially look at how much, especially on the limited side, how much it would cost for you to go out and finish that collection, because it could be beneficial before the announcement comes and you see varied spikes on cards that aren't that very liquid. For example, Matt McClung, there's not many of him, for example. So he's one of the ones that are a bit more expensive despite not really being a good L10 scorer. Anyway, regardless of that, like I said, I'm going to do scouting on particular sections. So I'll try and timestamp them down below. But essentially, I'm going to do an MVP part where I'm picking not your A1 caliber MVPs, the sort of Lucas, the Giannis's, the Jokic's of the world. I'm going to have some MVPs that I think are good buys now. I'm going to have some contender sort of filler champion options that allow you to compete in them efficiently. So you're going to want guys under an L10 of 20. And then I'm also going to go for those mid-range guys between 20 and 35 on an L10, where I think right now they're in a really good sweet spot where, one, their price is pretty good, and I think they're just in general undervalued. So the first guy I want to talk about is big man Anthony Davis. Now, I think with his contract extension that's just happened with the Lakers, they're made him the highest annual salary paid player that's out there. I think despite the fact that he's going to have a lot of game management, even with the new regulations that are coming in for players being able to be eligible for end of season awards and all-star payments, I still think he's a really, really solid MVP option. You can see the last few sales, albeit they are a month ago now, so they're probably going to be slightly outdated. You can still pick him up for 0.24 or £350 here. And if you go back and look at some of the players' values of what they were a couple months back, there's a really nice little opportunity and window for a few of these here to pick up, not guys that are your Lucas and your Giannis's, like I've mentioned, at £1,000 or like 0.8 of an ETH, These are guys that can compete with them in particular weeks as well. Now, all of this is speculative because we still we still don't know what Sorare are going to be planning on doing with updated competitions. There's daily NBA tournaments that they've said. But Anthony Davis, regardless, when he's on the court and when he's on point and he's on form, is well incapable of getting the 70 to 80 scores that you can see a Luka or a Giannis get. As you can see, he had this period 68, 62, 66, 65, 76, 74. That's more than capable of getting you those top tier MVP points that you want to see to be able to achieve podiums and top place finishes, or top 10s, top 5s, however you want to see it. The next MVP I want to talk about is slightly dependent, but he's still a surefire bet for me, is Damian Lillard. Again, everything's up in the air at the moment with what's going to happen to Blazers. I, for one, will be very, very surprised if come the start of the NBA season, Damian Lillard is still in Portland. I know they've said that they're willing to drag it out past the start of the season. I just don't think it will happen because I think even though Portland may be in that area where they're fine with letting it play out, I don't think the Miami Heat or whoever ends up landing him will want that. I think they'll want to be structured and set going into the season. Could be wrong, but that's just how I see my prerogative on things. But again, similarly to Anthony Davis, when Dame is on point, he's a very high scorer. He is very capable of getting in the 60s and 70s and beyond. As we all know, Dame has hit huge scores in games regardless. But it's at that point where now he was really rock bottom because obviously he got white shirted. They didn't play him. They just benched him for the entirety of the end of the season, realistically. And at 150, he was a scoop. I managed to pick one up myself. But even at the 230 mark, and you can probably go in with offers around the 200, I think it's a pretty, not surefire, but a solid MVP option that you could rely upon for certain weeks in the rare scene. A bit more of a surefire bet would be Jason Tatum here, obviously. Jason Tatum comes with obviously a bit more. He's younger than Damian Lillard. That is where then also the increased price will factor into it. The thing with JT is going to be that Jaylen Brown has had his deal secured. Jason Tatum's one's going to be around the corner pretty much soon. And Boston are going in on a 3 of him, Porzingis, and Jaylen Brown. I don't think this will see any issue with Jason Tatum's scoring. As you can see on the Matrix, again, he's very comfortable and capable of getting those 70-point games or those 60-point games. It's rare. He has got a few 40s in the bucket here, as you can see. And you might see with the season changing their rules where they have to play 20-minute games, it's going to be an interesting landscape to see how NBA players are seen and scored on Sorare next year, because I do think that we're going to see guys play 20 minutes and then if their team's up by 20, sit out. And it's going to affect competition pricing and scoring in that regard. But JT for me, again, another solid option. And the last two that I want to talk about in this realm is SGA. The Thunder, I think, are in for a really solid year. I think when they've got Chet coming back in properly, they've got Josh Giddey, who I think is really going to improve. They've got Lou Dort. They've got some nice pieces around them. They're missing a bit of depth for me. But I think the Thunder are going to improve. I don't think they're going to be looking at a play-in spot. I think they're going to be looking at a play-off spot. Whether they achieve that or not is different. Well, is to be decided. But again, right now, you can kind of pick one up for 339 here. Last few sales have been in around the 320 mark. In April, you're buying them. You're buying them at the floor in April because you're going to hold them until October. So you're expected to hold them for 4 or 5 months. But at this point here, I feel that if you were going to get into him now, it is a good window for having a young guy that's an MVP. I think he's 24 years old. So he'll have at least 6-7 years minimum on him. He's not, I say he's not that injury prone. Last year he was quite bad. But looking back historically, he hasn't been bad injury-wise. So again, another guy where it's at a discounted price to your Lukas, your Giannis, your Jokic that are possible and can achieve those high-ranking scores. And the last guy I want to talk about is Kawhi Leonard. Now, I know in the offseason he underwent more knee surgery, even though it was just a clean-up procedure. And everyone knows Kawhi Leonard's sort of injury history and record that comes with it. The thing with Kawhi is at the minute, he's at 107 quid. Like, you could probably get him on offer for around the 90 mark right now is what I would say. Now, when you go look at the amount of games that he's played recently, and torn meniscus in his right knee, this was the 26th of April. We're talking 4 months ago now. He's scheduled and planned to be ready to go into the training camps in October for the Clippers. He doesn't tend to hit scores that you'll see of the likes I've just mentioned in terms of the other options, but he is capable of doing them. If you just look at these sort of last, what's here, there's 20 odd games, 15 games that's around here. Kawhi is going to be a guy where if you know he's playing and he's playing on his own and Paul George isn't going to be there, or Paul George is there, he is capable of getting a 60, 70 point score. The question you want to ask yourself is, he's 31. I think he's got 2 years left on his contract. One of them is a player option. He's going to be playing for a contract pretty much next year, regardless of the player option that he takes up. I feel that there's no way he'll sit out 40, 50 games again. I can't see it happening. I think he will. I think next year he'll be better. Again, this is just my feelings, obviously. At 107, I think it would potentially be worth the angle and the gamble. If you want to move into rare champion, if you was playing rare contender only last year and you want to move into rare champion, Kawhi Leonard is someone that on a budget side of things can get you into that rare champion MVP spot, and he is capable of putting up those scores. So he'd be the last guy. He's not a bucket guarantee like I would say for the other four, but potentially worth the gamble. Right then, this next section of the video is going to be guys under the L10 mark of 20. So the idea surrounding these are that they're guys that will be the sort of fourth or fifth man in your lineup that enable you to play a champion, two heavy hitters, and then you have two guys that will be here, or you'll have one guy that's at the end of here with some 30 L10s in and around it. They're guys, they're enablers. They are there to help put your best guys in lineups, and you can try and help them get a double L10 or triple L10. As such, these normally come with a little bit more volatility. They'll either rarely see minutes in a particular night, or if they've got 2-3 games in a game week and someone's getting rotated or sort of rested for game management, you can potentially see them seeing an uptick in minutes and therefore usage. Now, I can't quite believe this is going to be the first one that I talk about, but Ben Simmons is the first guy I'm going to mention. L10 of 16. I think I can't say people are sleeping on Ben Simmons. I really can't. But we all know what Ben Simmons has been for the last 1.5 to 2 years in the NBA. He came back and had a small window of opportunity to play realistically within the Nets. There have been positive signs in the offseason with Ben Simmons, but there always is positive signs in the offseason with Ben Simmons. The thing that is slightly appealing to me on this is the L10 of 16 and the idea of a fresh start with the Nets, a full season at the beginning, clean injury. He's been in training with LeBron. You've seen it all online, but I just can't overlook what potential Ben Simmons has still. I know it's 26, he's 26 and everything, and we still sort of use the word potential for him. But the idea of that the guy is is easily comfortable of getting a triple-double. I'm still unclear on where I see the Nets next year. They've still got their hat in the ring for Damian Lillard. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think if you can get one in and around the 20 to 30 mark, right now, I would take the gamble on that, on the premise of that you don't know where he's going to be. He will have some role on that team in some capacity. The money he's earning and how good he can be is still a factor for it. It's just obviously what we know about Ben Simmons. But an L10 of 16, if he starts the season well, he's definitely a guy in the early weeks that you can get on board with. I know there's going to be the Chets and the Victor Wembanyama's and the Scoot Hendersons that are starting off at an L10 of 0, and they're going to skew the first game week. But I think this guy, there's a couple that I've got here, but this is one of the good ones, I'd really say. The next one I'm going to quickly mention, Bol Bol. Everyone here, if you've watched the channel before, you watched my Sorare NBA videos last year. If you watch the streams that I do sometimes with Mike on Live Before Locks, we all know Bol Bol. We all know that I like Bol Bol. He's moved to the Suns now. He isn't on the Magic. Everyone knows the sort of talent and athleticism that comes with Bol Bol. And you can see slightly here, if he gets good minutes, he can quite hit the 25s and the 30s. Which of an L10 of 13 is perfect and what you kind of want from a guy like that. But even then, he's still capable of hitting the floor. There are times when you've got someone at such a low L10 that they won't even hit their L10. Their floor will be below it. I think this role on the Suns have gone for the approach where they signed, obviously, Bradley Beal. They've re-signed, they have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker there as well. And then they went out and signed 1-year vet deals for some of these guys. Bol Bol was one of them that come in, not obviously on a vet deal, but they've got guys on 1-year deals that have had experience in the league in different areas, and they've gambled on a few guys. And Bol Bol's one of them. And I think he's not been relatively injury prone in comparison to his earlier years within the league. I think he'll get some minutes in Phoenix, especially for DeAndre Ayton, who I do anticipate to miss a few games as well. I think that idea of that he can float in between the 5 and the 4, for me, would be an interesting one. The price of what he used to be, Bol Bol used to be sort of 150 quid back in the day. And then obviously he slowly trickled down and went back from it and lost favour with the Magic at points. And now you can scoot one up for 30 quid here, but I think if you was to go on offer right now, you might be able to sneak it lower, but now seems to be a good time to get into a bowl is all I'm saying. The next one will be, I think he's the lowest L10 that I've got here, is Jared Vanderbilt, L10 of 11, and that's because you're going to see a few of these guys that played in the playoffs. They might come in for literally the last minute of the game within the playoffs. They weren't in the rotation, but if the Lakers were losing, they'd throw on the guys that aren't playing at all, and you might see them get 1 or 2, which obviously over time will dramatically bring down the L10s. He's now at 25, 30 quid primarily because of this L10, I'd say. It's no other reason for it. His L10 is 11. He's quite capable of getting the 25s and the 30s like we saw him do at the Jazz beforehand. And we've seen it here as well. He's capable of doing it if he gets in the minutes. I think in the regular season, especially in the playoffs, he wasn't really trusted in the rotation, especially against Denver and Golden State. But I think in the regular season, you'll see more minutes given to a player like Jared Vanderbilt, so you can trust him more within these sort of teams to not play anything, like to not play anything, essentially. I think the price right now is a little skewed in terms of the rare side at 40 quid. You're looking at a $5 for him limited side, though. And I think that's not bad. On the limited side, I'd probably gamble it more than the rare. So it all depends on what you're playing. But I think he's 23 as well. So if there's under 23 competitions, which I'm going to do a whole other video on, I think he'll be an interesting option definitely to take a look at. DeAnthony Melton is another guy I want to talk about. It all depends on what happens with Philly and James Harden. I do believe James Harden will be leaving Philadelphia. I don't think DeAnthony Melton will be included in any trades. I think they're going to look to keep him. He's a nice sort of swing man, partake, within the Sixers that have got. He can fill in at the 1, 2, or the 3. Not great particularly, I would say, but right now he's 40 quid when you're looking at him for here. The L10 of 20 is the highlight of this thing, because if you see a Tyrese Maxey sit out of a game, you will see a DeAnthony Melton uptick in usage rate. And you've seen before, he's more than capable of hitting near on 50s, close to 40 mark games. And that's essentially, again, what you want from a guy with an L10 of 20. You're looking for them to just overachieve a little bit, let alone near on doubling it. More of a punty option would be a James Wiseman. He's sitting at the 30 quid mark right now, which is probably where I would value him in comparison to, like, if we go back here, can we see? Yeah, £46 back in the day for it. He would have been a lot more as well when he was at Golden State before he moved to Detroit. Detroit's going to be an interesting one next year, depending on how they set up with Cade Cunningham. I want to see where their points move from, how everything's going to revolve around them. But at the 30 quid mark, he's not a bad pickup right now. Again, 21 years old, so he would be under 23 eligible if we see some sort of under 23 competitions on the NBA side like we see on the football side. But right now, it's sort of one, if you want to take the gamble on him again, limited side, he's 6 quid. I think that's probably worth it a bit more, maybe. £30 on the rare is still really cheap for him in comparison to how much he was at the start of the year at Golden State. I know Detroit's a different example, but another one of those sort of gambly ones is what I would say, though. He isn't a safe 5 there. It's also dependent on what they do with Jalen Duren, but it's one to look at. This is the banker, I would say, early weeks, is the Jordan Poole. Now, he's got an L10 and 19 because the Warriors and himself had a horrendous playoffs. He wasn't trusted within the rotations near on as much as people were anticipating. And in that series against the Lakers, despite the first game where he hit a 39, a 13, a 10, a 3, a 19, and 11, dragged his L10 down to 19. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this. In Golden State, anyway, he would have been the sort of 3rd or 4th choice scorer, I would say, depending on him and Andrew Wiggins. But I'd probably put Andrew Wiggins in front of him in that team. Now he's in Washington, and they've also let go of Porzingis. It's just him and Kuzma. You're going to see Jordan Poole hold the ball a lot. Is that a great thing? He will have a high turnover ratio, don't get me wrong. But at 19, for the early few games, I can quite easily see Jordan Poole hitting the 30s to maybe 40s. I might be gassing it a bit too much there, but I can see a 40-point score for him in Washington. I really do. And he's 23 still, so he will be under 23 eligible if there is under 23 tournaments. I think if you don't have, would I pay this price is the only issue, because obviously since he's moved to Washington, he inflated massively. I won a Jordan Poole during the playoffs, and I won him as a tier 2 because he wasn't a great asset for it. Like, if I go onto my gallery for it now, yeah, I won one 3 months ago, and he wasn't a surefire thing at all. I didn't really want to pick him. And then since he's moved to the Wizards, obviously he's skyrocketed because his usage rate's going to go out the park. I think right now, if you've got him, he's going to be an unbelievable option for you in the first few weeks. I'm not sure I'd pay the price though, because I think once he hits that sort of balanced, averaged out L10, I'm not sure it's going to be particularly worth it. it would be one of those sort of options and plays that you could make early doors that can help you. Not the first week when the guys with the 0 L10s, like I've mentioned, come in, but he's going to be one of them there or thereabouts that will help you build very competitive lineups in the first few weeks. Similarly to Jordan Poole, but I think on a more surefire bet will be Derek White. Obviously, Marcus Smart leaving Boston was a big thing for them. Derek White's now going to move into that sort of starting point guard role. Whether or not he's going to be capable of hitting the scores that he did in the playoff series against Miami is another question. But at 18 for the starting point guard that I would imagine the Celtics are going to run out with. There's obviously been the memes that have been going around of bald head Derek White going into next year. I think if you can snag one for the sort of 70 to 80 mark, I don't think that's a bad bet, especially with, again, like I've said, the first few weeks, Boston are going to be trying out their rotations with obviously Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and KP. I think KP will play as a 4-5, depending on Robert Williams' health. I think Derek White will cement himself at a 1, and then you'll have Jaylen Brown cementing himself at the 2. I don't think they're going to run Jaylen Brown at the 3 and JT at the 4 and KP at the 5. I might be wrong, but that's how I would see and envisage it happening. I think Jaylen Brown's much better at the 2, and Jason Tatum's much better at the 3, and Kristaps Porzingis is better at the 4. But it does depend on the health of Robert Williams. But again, like I mentioned, I think he's one of the solid options for the lower less than 20 L10 guys. And then the final section of the video is going to be guys that are in between that sort of 30 to 45 mark. Not quite MVPs, but second tier options, third tier potentially, that you could run in your lineups that will help you achieve top 10 finishes within the NBA. The first guy I want to talk about here, again, some of them I've tried to find guys as well that are decently valued, I feel, right now in the current state. And the first one I want to talk about is Chris Middleton. I think the Bucks are going to be back next year in a better capacity than they were last. I think Chris Middleton, as a healthy season, will come in at around a 45 to a 50 point scorer. And I think also couple that with his price right now at 50 quid. When you've seen him be a £184 player last year, I think the only thing that's baked into this is obviously the injury doubts that you get off Chris Middleton. I think if he comes into it fresh at 31, he's capable of getting a 40 to 50 point score, which is what you want off your second tier, third tier guy. I think right now, there isn't really many better options, apart from a few else that I'm going to show you, than a Chris Middleton in that sort of territory. Despite my hatred of him, Rudy Gobert is going to be the second option that I pick. The Timberwolves are going to be very, very weird, I feel, next year. They're heavily leaning on the bigs with Anthony Edwards. But with that all being said, 32 of an L10, he will have the most consistent floor you'll see probably on these guys here. You just need him to have a big block night along with it, which he's capable of doing. Obviously, that's the only thing he's realistically capable of doing. To couple with it, he can hit the 50s and 60s, which are nearing doubling his L10. Do I love the pick? It's the steady Eddie median pick, but I still think it's something that I wanted to mention around the 30 to 50 quid mark. He's up here now for 70 quid. No one's buying him for 70 quid now. No one's going to buy Rudy Gobert in the offseason for that. I think if you can get him around the 40 to 50 quid mark, though, I'd definitely be looking at Rudy Gobert. Tyler Hero is another one. Depending on what happens in the Dame trade, if he ends up going to Portland and then Portland ship him off, because I don't think Portland would keep him. An L10 of 30, he's in that scenario now where, again, his card is being undervalued, I'd say. He's 23, so I think he'd be under 23 eligible, depending on when his birthday is going into the start of next season. But he's quite capable of hitting 40s quite consistently, as you can see here, along with some of the 50 marks, depending on where he'd go. With Tyler Hero as well, I wouldn't really say injury is an issue with him. I know he broke his hand, but that's not really a thing. He normally plays pretty much every game. I think he's a very consistent scorer as well. So again, you will expect a ceiling that comes with a floor that comes with him. It'll all depend on, again, on what happens with the Dame side of things. But I think at £60 right now is quite a decent price for him, but you can probably haggle and get him in and around the 50 mark for him. And the last card that I want to talk about is Marcus Smart. Now, Marcus Smart's one, he was a very, very good scorer at the start of last year at Boston. Obviously now, not at Boston, he is with the Grizzlies, and he is going to be that starting point guard while Ja Morant serves his 25-game ban or whatever it is. He will always bring you good defensive stats in terms of steals. He'll have a couple of blocks in on a potentially good night, and he can sit up there and get a 15 to 20-point game with a couple of assists thrown in and a small amount of rebounds. Marcus Smart will have turnovers. They're not scoring personal fouls, I do believe, next year again, so that isn't something to be considered. I would have liked to have seen it. But he's around the 50 to 60 mark. It's not the best value in terms of how much he was in comparison to some of the others where you've seen the fall off for them. But I feel that because him You'll have Desmond Bain. You'll have a few others from the Grizzlies in any case. We'll have him playing up with Jaren Jackson Jr. I feel like it's something to... He's not being mentioned from what I've seen of other people talk about the NBA start of the season. I feel that him at the Grizzlies is a really good fit. I feel he'll help that franchise out quite a lot. And I think, yeah, I think at 27, he's capable of hitting the 30s and 40s again. Another one of those guys that you just definitely want to essentially think about is all I want to say. Right then, I hope you found that video somewhat helpful in terms of trying to buy and scout some of the guys ready for the start of the NBA season and the run up to it. The run up's always the big thing as well. Getting excited about what different sort of competitions they're going to be listing and having your gallery ready to attack the start of the season. If you did enjoy that, please hit that subscribe button, leave us a like on the video, and again, let me know in the comments down below what sort of changes you want to see for the NBA season next year here on Sorare. I'm going to do some other videos in the run up to this. Let me know other ones that you want me to talk about and some of the guys that you're probably targeting, and I'll have a look at them as well. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.